So, a lot of you have no doubt heard about the brouhaha, shall we say, that's going on in Hartlepool. Some of you may have no idea what is essentially going on. But don't worry, we're going to go and cover that today because that is today's main topic. Because this is. It sums up today's bizarre politics in the UK perfectly. It is a very, very unique situation, yet simultaneously, it is also an incredibly important election for Labour to actually win. And we don't know how this is going to turn out. Obviously, this is a by-election that is going on, but nevertheless, it is very, very important and something that we need to follow and at least be aware of what's going on there. So I've found a perfect article thanks to the Northeast Bylines, who they themselves are essentially taking Hartlepool for beginners, essentially. So we're going to go over this article through bit by bit and essentially explain what's going on in Hartlepool and why essentially it's worth paying attention to. So before we do that, please do remember to hit those like and share buttons. That does help out the channel a lot. And also down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And thank you to all those people that do that or support those channels just by hitting those like and share buttons as well. Like I say at the Tesco, every little helps. So into the article today then. So, as I said, this comes from the Northeast Bylines, and the title is Hartlepool for Beginners, a by-election special. History sets Hartlepool apart from the other towns of the Tees Valley, which are largely a product of the 19th century Hartlepool. On the other hand, there was already on the map when Bede was alive, a monastery and abbey having been founded there in 674. In fact, based as he was just up the road in Jarrow. They might even be considered existential next-door neighbours. The town might seem out on a limb these days, but that wasn't always the case. On the site of the original abbey, there now stands the magnificent 13th century St Hilda's Church. And walking through the streets of the terraced houses, or what is now known as the headland, between the church and the seashore, the first-time visitor may be struck by the fact that the whole area is, well, quite nice. A bit jaded in places, but not run down by any means, far from it. And the headland has two primary schools, both of which perform relatively well compared to schools elsewhere in the town. But why would anyone expect it to be different? Why wouldn't it be nice? Well, one of the reasons that the Tees Valley is in the sharp end of the government's levelling up agenda, and it has suffered more than most regions from the economic stagnation and the under-divestment spanning decades. And within the Tees Valley, Hartlepool has arguably suffered more than most. Even now, while the Treasury is coming to Darlington and investment is coming to Teesside through the agency of the South Tees Development Corporation, the bonanza hasn't reached Hartlepool. Quite the opposite. If anything, the current difficulties of Liberty Steel and their financial backers, Greensill, may shortly result in the loss of over 250 jobs in the town. But it shares its industrial past with the rest of the North East, and with that came the overwhelming support of Labour. During the decades of economic stagnation, however, the town started to become better known for its apathy, for its steadfastness. At one point, Peter Mandelson won an election here based on a turnout of just 38%. The predominancy of Labour, in fact, has become a bit of a joke locally. Now, if there's economic stagnation, you would expect the town to look a bit run down. Some of it does, and you would expect there to be some sort of enlarged support for Brexit, in which, at 69%, Hartlepool excelled itself, which resulted in Richard Trice of the Brexit/Reform Party standing for election there in 2019, which brings us back to the headland. If the town itself is geographically isolated, the headland is further isolated from within the town standing on the peninsula, with one road in and one road out. In the local elections in 2019, Labour lost overall control of the council, which is now dominated by local interest groups and independents. In the autumn of 2019, however, a group of these independents crossed over to the Brexit Party and formed a coalition with 3 Conservatives, and essentially took control of the council. And then those councillors, the 3 represented of the Headland and the 2 neighbouring ward of Hart. And what did the people of the Headland do when it became clear that the supposedly independent councillors weren't actually independent at all? Nothing. No fuss. Hartlepool people don't make a fuss. So some were undoubtedly upset at what happened, but they did express their discontent very, very quietly. And the anti-Brexit minority would defend the town by pointing to the Headland and saying, it's them on the Headland, they're very Brexity. Now, if they're very, quote, pro-Brexit by Hartlepool standards, and deprivation correlates positively with support for Brexit, you would expect the Headland to be the sort of place that has burned out cars, bits of waste ground, which it doesn't. What it does have, on the other hand, is the great coalescence of Brexit support, which is bungalows driven on to the Headland. And the first thing you will see is an acre of bungalows. Well, not well-heeled detached ones in their own grounds, but terrace ones, chalets, you might say. So it has lots and lots of elderly people, as you would expect in a region that has suffered years of depopulation, and the resident population is also overwhelmingly white. The ethnic majority population of Hartlepool is tiny. It is as inward migration from the EU. This town is possibly as Anglo-Saxon today as it was when St Helilda stalked the cloisters. It should be noted in passing that the town's flirtation with right-wing extremism cannot be pinned on the Headland. The single councillor for the For Britain movement represents a ward elsewhere, and in any case, the new recruit to the Brexit Party then left again in February of 2020 and went back to being independent. So it was all sorted. However, the reluctance of the people of Hartlepool to make a fuss is perhaps down to what we might call the unfortunate incident. And the unfortunate incident was during the Napoleonic Wars, involving a hanging of a monkey because they thought it was a Frenchman. It is also the unidentifying tale of gossip and relaxed attitude to animal cruelty and well-developed xenophobia. It is also a story that the national press has already picked up on in sort of a casual way, and some doubt it has been expressed as to whether it's a historical fact or even just an urban myth. It rather misses the point. It was Bede who was the master of the urban myth. He, very prudently, never questioned the veracity of the miscellaneous events he reported, although he was sure to mention if there were any living eyewitnesses, because he had no evidence as to whether there were fact or not. What mattered was whether people believed them, and how they behaved in relation, which is why it is significant in Hartlepool. Many towns have been the location of gruesome and unpleasant incidents in their history. Generally, they keep them there. Not so to Hartlepool. It seems that in the early 2000s, people in the town wished to make a statement about not taking politics seriously. A candidate in the mayoral elections of 2002 was one H. Angus the Monkey, who was duly elected. Hartlepool didn't want to forget its past, even the bad bits, but the 2016 referendum brought renewed seriousness to politics. And the people of Hartlepool may have been keener to forget the town's past altogether in the coming weeks, as its focus becomes of national attention, and the story now reaches a new audience that doesn't see the funny side of it. The election is anything but a foregone conclusion, and there are a lot of issues at stake, with a lot of egos to be dented. The people of Hartlepool may find the spotlight an uncomfortable place to be in. And as like I say, we will be keeping an eye on Hartlepool as things do unfold there, almost certainly. Because, like I say, I think this is going to become a bit of a hotspot in the coming weeks. So take this as a primer on Hartlepool, what it is like as a place. And as we go forward, it will give you an understanding of potentially the events that could unfold as the weeks go on. And like I say, you saw very clearly there that you had people running as independents that weren't as independent as they first claimed to be. Like I say, they were independent, and then they became Brexit Party, then they coalitioned with the Conservatives, and then essentially took over the council. Again, a bit worrying, almost certainly, because again, there are independents running there who, again, we now have to, shall we say, question their true independence. Obviously, there are other things going on as well that we haven't mentioned yet, but don't worry, we will get to them sooner or later, because, again, they are pretty important when you're discussing this whole thing. But that's enough about Hartlepool for today, I think. As always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.